Michael, can you tell us a little about your experience with stress and panic attacks?
Allison, what was really interesting for me is I went for over a year without it being diagnosed, and then it wasn't diagnosed by a doctor. I had pretty traditional symptoms: lightheadedness, shortness of breath, chest pains. I became forgetful. I felt like I was in a fog for about a year. I went to specialist after specialist. My thyroid was off, so I went to the thyroid doctor, and they gave me thyroid medication, but I was still off. I went to the cardiologist, who had me on a heart monitor, was still off. Went to a neurologist, and not one even considered the possibility that it was stress and not a physical issue. It wasn't until a friend of mine had me come into her office one day and said, "Check this out." She had panic attacks on the screen and all the symptoms, and every one of them was me. It wasn't until then that I realized what the problem was. That I think typically we get caught up in thinking that it has to be a medical issue because we have these physical symptoms. But in reality, it was stress and panic attacks that were causing all of my physical issues.
Michael, why do you think so often this goes undiagnosed?
I think for two reasons. One, within the medical community, I think that's their focus. Secondly, for us, we can feel embarrassed that we don't want to acknowledge that it's stress or panic attacks because it can make us feel weak. There was a friend of mine who I could see was going through it and was with another friend. We both saw what was going on. And my other friend said, "I don't know if you want to bring it up because it could embarrass them." Because we think we are weak or that there's something wrong with us if we can't manage our stress. I think a big part of it is for us to feel comfortable with it, to be willing to acknowledge it. And I've liked the fact that I see more and more celebrities being willing to talk about the impacts of stress or panic attacks on their lives to make it okay. One of the most powerful things for me was when I talked with my customers, with my staff that worked for me, and I shared with them what I was going through. It was really cathartic and healing for me because I didn't feel like I had to deal with it on my own, that I didn't have to feel shame around it. And I was so grateful for how all of them wanted to help me. One kind of funny story around it. I was with a client, and driving had become difficult for me. I was struggling to stay focused and had gotten into some dangerous situations while driving. I asked them, because typically I would drive my client, I asked them if they would drive. And they said they would. It turned out they were probably the worst driver I have ever been with. We're on the freeway and they're slamming the brakes for no particular reason. And I said to them, "I really appreciate that you drove. Do you mind pulling over and letting me drive? Because I think you're making it more stressful for me having you drive than if I do it myself. Is that okay?" And they laughed and understood because they realized what a terrible driver they were.